Hello, Assalamu alaikum. This is Marguerite Hill with MuslimARC. We're really excited to get started on today's program. Just a little bit about our work. MuslimARC is a human rights education organization. We are a media-based organization where we work to create, connect, and cultivate. We create anti-racism curriculum. We connect through media and storytelling, and we cultivate leadership development and community-based programs. So I'm really excited today. We have two guests, and we're waiting for our second guest to come on to talk about her work. But I'm really excited to kind of get started with the kind of to explore SWANA, Southwest Asian North African storytelling, very timely, especially what's happening within the region. And so I'm really excited to bring to you Justin Mashouf and Rhym Guissé. She's gonna have to correct me on the pronunciation. Definitely got to do my homework. So apologies ahead of time, but I'm really excited to have a conversation to talk about storytelling, especially stories that are not told. We're going to be looking at both narrative and documentary storytelling, and we're going to talk about the process. And our guests will have some really great tips for you this evening. And so, um, really, we'll start with our first guest, Justin. So, can you tell me a little bit about your work? Tell all of us about your work, your background, what you're working on right now, and what feels most urgent to you.
Yeah, Assalamu alaikum, Marguerite. Thank you. It's an honor to be part of your program. I've been a big fan of Muslim art for years, big supporter. So, mashallah, I'm glad that you're putting this together. My work, I've been doing this for some time now, almost, how long has it been? I mean, it's getting up to 20 years now, working in, nonfiction storytelling. A lot of my work deals with kind of communities of color and the Muslim diaspora at large. I really I like telling stories that I'm passionate about. My first film, Warring Factions, was actually a personal documentary about bridging the gap between Iran and the United States through movement and martial arts, particularly hip hop and break-in, and the Iranian martial art of Varzish Bastani, which is ever so relevant, unfortunately, right now in the time that we're at. And then I did a film that we released in 2019 called The Honest Struggle, which is about a Muslim man re-entering society who was formerly a gang chief in Chicago, and his re-entry into society, and the Inner City Muslim Action Network and the amazing work that they do to help men and women turn their lives around after incarceration. And then my last project that I put out that's independent of my own, that was my own, is called 1774, which was really an offshoot of The Honest Struggle, because I met the main subject, Hamza, while I was making The Honest Struggle. And I was trying to find the right subject for the film. And our relationship and his act of giving $17.74 went viral around the world after I tweeted his anonymous pay stub that he sent me to donate to Palestine. And we've made a film about that and him coming home from prison after 40 years in prison. So, that's really kind of my work in a nutshell. I've worked on a lot of things. I have a production company, and we do everything from game trailers and ads, but really the passion lies in this long form storytelling.
That is just really amazing. I really hope that all of our viewers get a chance to experience, like to watch it. So we'll include links and follow-ups, especially for those who RSVP'd, but we'll also include those on our social media channels. And so like as we come in, like I want to also like kind of introduce our other participant, Rhym. And so I'm going to bring her up to the stage and where she can introduce herself and her work. So hopefully get everybody in. So Rhym, thank you for joining us. And so we just had an introduction of Justin.
You're on mute, Rhym.
Thank you for that.
So, Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Yeah, Assalamu alaikum, Rhym. It's really great to introduce you to more of our followers, and we've got to get to know you through the Luminaries program, and I've met you before at the Artist Spotlight at Pillars, and they've been doing a really great job cultivating the ecosystem of Muslim creatives. And so I would love for you to tell us your name, a bit about your background, and what you're working on right now that feels most urgent and important to you.
Absolutely. So just to introduce myself briefly, my name is Rhym Guissé, and I am an actress and a filmmaker, primarily a director. I have a background in commercial and narrative spaces. I have extensive experience also running a production company as well. And we've done a lot of commercial work, branded content work, in addition to narrative feature work. What's a lot about my background comes from this place of being, from Northwest Africa. And I say Northwest Africa because I'm from Algeria, born and raised, my mother's side of the family, and Mali, West Africa, which is my dad's side of the family. And so I've had a really interesting route to get to Los Angeles. It wasn't a direct line, but I really hold those stories from from that part of the world and those regions close to my heart. And as I've kind of endeavored into the narrative space with passion projects and stories I want to tell, that is what I'm working on right now. That is most pressing is a short film that's a proof of concept for a feature film that I will be shooting in Algeria, inshallah, this summer, about my upbringing as the only Black Afro-Arab in my city and potentially that part of the country.
That is really amazing. I mean, one of the things that bringing you both together in a conversation is to be able to talk about identities that, I mean, it's very relevant in this time, like with the targeting of Palestinians, right, of Palestinian activists. Like maybe you could talk a little bit about this kind of political moment and how this kind of adds to the urgency of your work.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, as an Iranian right now, for the last, month plus, I've just been beside myself with the situation that's happening in Iran and Lebanon and, everywhere that's being affected by essentially, Zionist violence. I lost in the early weeks of the bombardment my cousin, who was killed in an airstrike. And so my heart is just there every day. And it's very difficult for me to even, focus at times. But I really try to kind of keep reminding myself and renewing my intentions of why I do this work. It's not to see my name in lights. It's not to see my picture. It's not to raise my clout or my social media following, but it's to tell these stories that can open hearts and that can expose just the ugliness of the empire and how brutal it has been to our people, and how we can unite and work together to work towards justice and establishing a world with compassion.
That is why your voice is so important in this moment. You've extended your compassion to other communities, like you are this bridge builder, and and for you to even show up today, it just really means so much to us. Rhym, during this moment, right, where you have the targeting of Arab identities and Arab Americans, can you maybe speak to this moment now for you as an Arab American, how the kind of, what's happening in Lebanon and Palestine, but also just globally, like with how this adds to the urgency of your work?
Certainly, it's and of course I'm, extending my condolences to you, Justin.
Thank you.
This journey kind of began for me a little bit halfway through what's happening in Palestine, and it was a different story that I wanted to tell about Malian migrants living in LA who were, undocumented, and this was pre, the current administration. And so what's been really ironic and horrible, but also meaningful, is the film doing so well on the film festival circuit, my short film Caft, because it really got to the heart of what it looks like for a family of any background that's not, born in lineage, having lineage in America, how difficult it is to try and get citizenship in America, and the type of life they have to live in hiding and sometimes in isolation. And it's been doing, really well. And that kind of, with what's happening in Lebanon and partly Yemen, and obviously, the other parts of the region, also seeing how other countries reacted to that. I will say I've been very proud that Algerians have spoken up many a times and have wanted to advocate for the Palestinian cause. And that triggered so much. I have this story in my heart. It's called El Horba, this short film that I'm shooting this summer, inshallah. I think it helped me realize, the Algerian identity, being Algerian American / Malian, what it means to be Afro-Arab, how Arabs are, reacting to my identity as an Afro-Arab, in these spaces, in these political discourse spaces on social media. The commentary that, so many bigger social media influencers have about the treatment of Afro-Arabs and Blacks in these Arab nations. What is that looking like? I think that is such an important topic to talk about and to crack open as an Arab. And I really hope that in this moment in time, I do think there's space for all of it, all of this discourse to happen simultaneously.
Thank you. I mean, you're both just building bridges, and connecting the dots for a lot of us. And that's like an important part of the role of storytellers. And so, I'm going to kind of try to do a little deep dive. This is sort of like when we like trying to go deeper in some of the questions that you've touched upon, but we do have some space to do those deep dives. And so I'm going to shift to Justin, and I want you to share, talk a little bit more about like your work on mass incarceration, where your story centered on with the righteous struggle is like with the Black Muslim man re-entering society. And you also shared like your documentary highlights the income disparities, right? And as an Iranian American filmmaker, how did you think about your role behind behind the camera, as an ally and in showing, as solidarity? Like, what was that like behind the camera?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the things that drew me to the story of incarcerated Muslims was what inspired my journey to Islam, really. I come from a very secular Iranian family, and the first introduction or the first kind of words I really heard about Islam weren't necessarily from my own family, but it was in hip hop music, talking about Malcolm. And I was, as a young person, in my early, like, pre-teens, asking who is this Malcolm X, and reading about Malcolm, and reading the autobiography, and also the book that was made for kind of younger audiences. It was called By Any Means Necessary, and it really shifted my view of America and of spirituality, and kind of opened the gates, or the Pandora's box of Islam for me. So I was immediately attracted to that story through that, and the value it gave to my life. So in around 2008, I started reaching out to a handful of incarcerated Muslims from all different backgrounds. The majority of them were Black, though, and one of them was the story eventually shifted to focusing on re-entry, because of the limitations of the project. We shifted to re-entry, and I was introduced to the Inner City Muslim Action Network and their amazing work that they do there. So for me, being behind the camera, I was just in awe of the men that I was in touch with, by the kind of strength and perseverance that they had. And they spent years, like I said, Hamza did 40 years in prison. Sadiq, the late Sadiq Davis, who the film The Honest Struggle is about, he did about 25 years in prison, but he did almost full years in isolation, which is essentially torture. And the fact that he could come out of that experience and still want to sing and make music and smile and make people laugh, it just blows my mind. If somebody put me in solitary confinement for more than 2 hours, I'd probably lose my mind. I hope that answers your question. I'm not like babbling too much.
No, that's just really truly powerful. I mean, it's being, one of the things that, I mean, a lot of us, we all have our own stories to tell, right? And the gift to the world, right, is to be able to not only tell our stories, but then when you're able to tell another person's story, and that people could see that courage, and like, it's a very delicate thing that you held with those, with in the documentary, of giving those stories the platforms for these brothers with dignity, right? It was very beautiful. And so, like, with Reem, I mean, I just talked about a little bit of, like, that gift of sharing your story. Can you maybe talk to us as far as, like, an actress? Like, what is that like as somebody that is telling parts of their own story in the narrative form?
Certainly, yes. It is. It's been an interesting journey. These have been stories and lived experiences that I've had, obviously, and carried with me all of my life. And this is my first venture into telling it. I didn't really have any plans to. There's a certain level of vulnerability there that I'm still navigating and figuring out. But I'm excited because I think on a very rudimentary level, this is such a universal story of being a third cultural kid and wanting to feel like, where do I fit in? Where do I belong? I think globally, on so many people who have moved and migrated to other parts of the world, and then have decided to have children. I'm really interested in, like, the concept of identity and how that evolves through time, and what shapes that, and what are some of the sacrifices that are made along the way. in a family structure. And so that's really what I'm exploring with my film. And I think as I thought about it for the last year and a half, if I'm going to do this, if I'm going to endeavor, so many people from different backgrounds have really expressed interest and connection to that. And so this being my first foray into telling my own story and sort of playing myself, I'm excited. I'm excited. We'll see how it turns out. I'm very hopeful, inshallah, that it'll do well. But I'm just, we're just gonna have to wing it.
Well, we're really hungry for those stories, especially those stories that touch upon multiple identities and lesser known, not just lesser known stories, but have us rethink how we see ourselves. And so, and there's a lot of things that I want to revisit with both of you on your storytelling, from like Justin, like your your first documentary, which told your story, right? So maybe can you tell us like about that process? What was that like for you of telling the stories of Iranian American? Like, so few people know about that, the martial arts form and connecting that with breakdancing. So now like I understand. I was like, oh yeah, it was in his blood. This is natural, It's like
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think like I said, I love telling stories about things that I'm passionate about. I feel like so much of our work, it's there's so much effort that goes into it that you really have to love it. You have to like be obsessed with it. You kind of have to be a crazy person in many ways, because we relegate a lot of worldly pleasures in order to pursue sometimes these projects. And for me, I was obsessed, as a kid with hip hop, with breaking. I started when I was about 11 years old, and when I wanted to make my first film, at that time, I was also like probably the most active in the breaking scene. It's in the film. We had gotten like to the regional championships of this one series, this breaking series, and I'd never like been known to win events. And finally in my life, like while I was in film school, I was also kind of leveling up in my breaking career. And so I wanted to tell this story about kind of American culture, myself as an American, and like my favorite part of American culture being hip hop, and learning about my own like historical ethnic culture of being Iranian, and going there as kind of an ambassador of American hip hop, if you will, and learning about my own background and culture, and the music and all of the kind of moves that are involved in this martial art called Varzish Bastani. And it's done in a place that's called Azurkhune, which means a house of strength. It's a really, really fascinating ritual that kind of blends both spirituality, religion, history, with movement and music, and there's really nothing like it. And so, just being somebody who loved movement, as soon as I learned about Varzish Bastani, maybe I was in high school or early college, I was like, what is this? Like, I have to, because breaking, like, it takes inspiration from a million different places. If you look at breaking in the early 1980s, the late 70s, early 1980s, the lexicon of movements just kept getting broader, broader, and broader. And people took things from martial arts, people took things from gymnastics, people took original, unique movements, which then can be like, there's really wild clips from early cinema, meaning like when they first were figuring out how to record and capture moving images from Africa. And it's like the early 1900s, and there are these tribal dances that are being done, and the movements that are being done are like breaking moves that we like as hip hop, like breaking people, we thought those moves came from the 1980s, but those moves were actually like inherited through these really beautiful lineages of culture that I don't want to say we're asleep, but we're definitely in many ways suppressed by the transnational, you know, the transatlantic slave trade, right? And we're then opened up creatively for people in you know, in the 1980s, and some would say, you know, some of the dancers, like black dancers in the 1950s, like mid 1900s, though they were also mimicking those movements that were in their bloodlines. So those ideas for me like all culminated into why I made Warring Factions. I was like, I have to explore this idea of movement and the bridging of those two cultures.
Thank you. That is just so powerful, you know, and thinking about like from movement and memory and, you know, just like what is passed on in our bodies. So that's just really, really powerful. So I'm gonna switch it to Rhym, and Rhym, I want you to talk about cut. I wanna my French is really terrible. My teacher is just looking down on me. It's just like, yeah, she just needs to go back to the book. So tell us about your film, but also, you know, like I guess to provide some type of context. One of my colleagues once, you know, he talked about the and within the immigrant rights struggle, it is often depicted like what's happening with ICE was often depicted, you know, focused primarily on non-Black Latinos, because we know that there are a lot of Afro Latinos who, you know, so there's a lot of connections. I'm just seeing all those connections, but it's like that. And a lot of times within the African American community, there are people that are saying that's not my problem. But many of us have, like through intermarriage, or there's many Black immigrants who are particularly vulnerable to the immigration justice system or immigration system, where there's disproportionate amounts of deportations, but also Black immigrants are less likely to get their citizenship. And that Black women, that African women are, especially have low levels. And then it's like when it's layered with Muslim, then they have very low levels of getting their naturalization. So I want you to maybe just speak to the various audiences that your film can reach, and what do you hope that we can move with that? How can we move people's hearts in this?
Absolutely. Yes. You know, I really, my goal with the film primarily was to help foster and cultivate empathy for immigrants, whether they're legal or illegal, right? And that's just such a term that I don't really believe in. But I really, the film touches upon, like you said, a lot of groups. The reason why I felt compelled to tell that specific story was because a lot of the narrative pre all the ICE raids and what's happening right now in this administration, you know, internationally, especially in Europe, you know, African migrants have been really mistreated, looked down upon, treated as second citizens. And this was, you know, in Europe, all over Asia. And so there are so many reasons why I was compelled to tell the story, but that was kind of like the Kickstarter for me. And on top of that, living in Los Angeles, a lot of the, you know, films that I saw that dealt with immigration primarily were, you know, non-Afro Latino or Hispanic stories. And having met so many friends that were of different, you know, from different countries, that story of becoming naturalized and that process and how cumbersome it is and how challenging it is and how expensive, that was a concept that if you were not a foreigner going through it, you weren't aware of what it took. You didn't know how long it could take, or even if people were in a position to be able to do this. So when I heard so many Americans be like, well, why didn't you just come here the right way, when they were, you know, hearing about all the illegal, quote unquote, migrants crossing from the border, you know, there's such a learning curve there that I realized. There's such an ignorance, a level of ignorance that I think a lot of Americans weren't aware of. That I was like, well, let me show you, you know, just a quick slice of like what an African family endures coming to this country for a better life. You know, not getting into the weeds of the political aspects of it all either. You know, I think getting to the heart of just family, appreciating your culture, missing your homeland. You know, statistically, so many folks that come to this country that immigrate, you know, don't really want to, but they feel they have to, and they feel compelled. That was certainly my family story. Although we did come here, you know, through a certain way that was considered legal. It's just, there was a learning curve there that I was like, okay, this film hopefully will show people that, you know, applying for asylum is not easy. Coming here, even trying to do it the right way, is actually very, very hard and expensive and takes years and is a process. And on top of that, people who come here are not trying to do harm, you know, they're just trying to live their lives. And so the film really came from a place of love, a place of education, a place of also cracking open that lens to show it's not just the Hispanic or the non-African Latino, Afro-Latino lens. You know, in Louisiana, I was going to say, but in Los Angeles, there's so many immigrants. Like, the story behind my story was even folks that were a part of my production team, my filmmaking team. You know, my composer is British and she was dealing with visa. My production designer, Masha Nova, who's amazing, Russian, you know, had to become naturalized, and it was challenging for her. My editor, Richard Bai, Chinese, didn't know if he was going to stay here for the next year after our film. There are all these other, you know, folks from other parts of the world who come to this country who really want a better life and do what they can and bring the love from their culture and their heritage and their countries here as well, and want to maintain it. And there's nothing wrong with that. And there's a beautiful blending of the American culture and whatever culture they bring. And so I think part of my film was showcasing that the protagonist, Aaliyah, you know, had a foot in two worlds, a foot in being, you know, holding on to her Malian African traditions at home and having that love and that warmth that she felt, and then also the American life, you know, stepping outside, wanting to belong, wanting to be friends with folks that are Americans, wanting to connect and find middle ground. Because I think ultimately my storytelling, I really want to focus on what do we have in common, not what are the differences. And so I think that is so important in my voice as an artist. And I really loved our festival circuit, because as I traveled to our film festivals with CART, so many people came up to me from Caribbean background, from, you know, all types of backgrounds, to say, I know people, I have family that went through this. And I love that it felt really authentic, including my actors. My actors really connected to this, especially the ones that played my parents. They were like, we went through this. So that was really reassuring, and I hope that I am able to continue telling those types of stories.
I hope you are too. I mean, it's both, you know, both of you are doing powerful storytelling that is both affirming and allows us, for those who may not have the same experiences, but to be able to connect with those experiences and show up in meaningful ways for our neighbors and for our friends. So, like, Justin, I want you to talk about, like, doing this filmmaking outside of the traditional systems. So maybe you could first provide a little framework. What are the kind of traditional ways that people get their documentaries out there? And then how you've had to work and be creative in getting these projects off the ground?
Yeah. I mean, nowadays, things have changed, and there's almost no one way anymore. But oftentimes people, kind of the traditional way of making things is, working as, coming up in the beginning, and you work for essentially another production, and then you're able to kind of build a certain type of clout, and then have your own ideas, and then present those ideas and get investors to pay for those films to get made, or to get a larger studio or a production company involved. And I think I've done, in my career, kind of parallel pathing in many ways. But and this has become the standard for most documentaries, because, or not, most indie documentaries, is basically paying as you go, or working for free, and fundraising as you go. So I would shoot, like The Honest Struggle, I would shoot sample reels and kind of proof of concepts, and what I would call research reels with the subjects that may eventually end up being the subjects of the main documentary. And then, submitting for dozens of grants, many of which, independent documentaries were often funded by ITVS, which is under the kind of PBS umbrella, which is essentially is going away. So, having to find, unique, creative ways, getting our community involved, taking major pages out of Spike Lee's book, and putting, meetings together in people's living rooms, and showing the samples, and saying, this is the presentation, and this is the vision, and this is where it could go, and bring people on board to get funds together. Now we're seeing some Muslim organizations stepping up to fund this work, but those things need to level up. As our work is leveling up, and we know how important it is to, level up our reach in the world, our community needs to level up in the support that they're giving. So initiatives like Pillars, which you mentioned, initiatives like the Islamic Scholarship Fund, I was the recipient of their first film grant. And if it weren't for that grant, it's highly likely that The Honest Struggle would not have been completed. So it's really important, to support these storytellers, especially at early stages of their projects, because it's what keeps the lights on. It's what keeps us going, and being able to capture our stories.
Thank you. So let's, Rhym, you have a story that's now in its early stages, right? And so I want you to tell us a little bit about this story, and your process, and how regular folks like me who, we love creative things, but we have not been committed in the way that you are, how could we support and be part of that type of project?
Yes. Oh my gosh. I am so excited about this short. As I mentioned, I think to you, it's a short film as a proof of concept for a feature eventually. But the short film, the film is called El Horba, and El Horba, primarily in North Africa, is referenced in music and in culture, and it really, what it means, that the phrase encapsulates a few things. It's very layered. It's a missing your homeland, a longing for your homeland, living in a different country, feeling alienated in the country that you live in, and just really missing, kind of what you grew up with. And so that's what the term Al Horba means. And my film is really about, essentially, a girl who is, rather a woman who is currently living in Los Angeles, and she is, married and contemplating the idea of motherhood. with her partner. And what could that look like? You know, what is the support that I have if I were to bring a child into this world and I don't have my family anywhere near me, not even in this country, and doing it on my own. And then that kind of kicks off reflective, the reflection of growing up in Algeria. And so we go back to Algeria, actually specifically Annaba, the city. And she's an 11-year-old girl who is living in a multi-generational, close, tight-knit family filled with love and affection and warmth. But also, you know, she's the only black person in the household and in the village, and in the city. And so what does that look like? How does her family kind of handle the differences? What are some of the microaggressions that she's facing when she leaves her house? Because the community has never really been faced with that before, when they're their own, being black. And just kind of that, you know, poetic reflection on what it feels like to be other in your own homeland, and then also still living somewhere and missing that, no matter what that experience was. And it was a rich experience, and so I'm really excited to bring that to life. I really think that this is such a general, broader conversation and story, as we're looking at, you know, I think statistically for the first time in America, you know, immigration, it's more going out. People are leaving the country and living elsewhere versus people coming in and moving here and establishing themselves here. So this is a unique time in history, in American history, where this is happening. And as Americans are going abroad, you know, what does it look like to go over there to start a family where your lineage is not based there? Whether it be in Vietnam, Ho Chi Minh City, whether it be in Morocco or Portugal, what does that look like for your children or your future children? How are they going to identify with that, you know, myriad of family history? So I'm really excited to be filming it this summer, inshallah. You can follow me on my Instagram account, The Journey. I'll start documenting it as we get closer to principal photography. And I have an Indiegogo link that will be going live next week. I'll be able to share that with you all as well. And you can just email me if you're interested in supporting me, you know, rhymguissé@gmail.com. Write to me if you want to be of assistance, whether in the creative side and you're curious and you want to know how that works, or if you're interested in donating, and anywhere, you know, in between. I'm really excited to help bring folks into the fold, into the process of filming there. This will be my first time filming back home. You know, I usually go and I visit and I stay with family, but this will be the first time I'm able to bring my craft there and help tell the story from there.
That's so powerful. That
Amazing.
I mean, that we could be part of that. You know, I mean, the people that did pitch in those living rooms, Justin, to help set, you know, to launch that career and that storytelling, how many people it touched and how many people it connected to, and how that transformed how we understood abolition, how we understood mass incarceration, and how many people just really fell in love with our brother Sadiq. Like, it's just so powerful. So we do have a question that came in, and so I want to make sure we can get to the questions. And so Layla writes, have you ever felt pressure to shape your story to fit what these platforms think is marketable SWANA narratives? So I feel like this is relevant for both of you. So, you know, like, maybe you could speak to that. Have you felt the pressure?
I'll go first. I think, I think in some ways there is pressure when we are independent. Though I will say this: when our livelihoods do not depend on the success of the final project. I mean, it may ensure that we never make a film ever again, but that I think is a helpful part of the process, right? I think if it'd be a little bit different if I knew like, oh, this is it. Like, if this doesn't do well, then I'm not going to be able to pay rent. That's thankfully not in the compass, because if it was in the compass, I would feel a lot more pressure to be, more friendly to what I call the algorithm monsters.
Yeah, that's such a good point, Justin. You're absolutely right. I think being independent is really allows for so much freedom in storytelling and the voice you want to use. I always tell folks who are interested in venturing into film and TV and just storytelling and media to just, find a different way to make money and income that is not tied to your passion projects. Mm-hmm. Because if you're able to do, to have a separation, then you're not at the whim of your passion project happening and your story being told.
Absolutely.
I think being very resourceful is going to go very far. And if you're fortunate, that your films are, appealing to a certain audience or a certain group of folks that really connect with your subject matter, then that is who's going to hopefully support you, and that is who you're making it for yourself, but also for them. And so, no matter how small or big that audience is, just know that they can do so much. They don't have to be a big number, and then you have your built-in audience that you can actually utilize if you're trying to sell to a bigger, let's say, distribution. Production company or distributor, sales agents, whatever. Like, you really have much more freedom to make what you want. If you're trying to be more commercially viable, that's okay. I'm not going to vilify anybody that wants to be commercially viable. That's fine. I think it's smart if you're able to still stay true to your voice and what you want to say, and find a way to make it commercially viable, and be able to sell your story, whether it's in script form or whether you're trying to sell an idea to get financing from Hollywood. You can absolutely do that. I'm not going to knock that, because that can be a real pathway for some people. Some people just have stories that are, while they're very they can be very art house and authentic, they can also be appealing to an A24 or someone else that is in a position to support and financially back it. I think that's amazing. I'm just not that kind of like a marketing person, and sometimes I see people that are matched with people like that, and I've been fortunate to be matched with people like that sometimes in the past too, depending on the project. So you just kind of have to figure out, I think, on a case-by-case basis on the type of the story you want to tell.
And it's also, I think, where you are in your career. I mean, I think if you see people, like, if you see the Bait, the TV show that Riz Ahmed just put out, I mean, it's just like, it's wild what he's done. And I give that show major props. But it's also come after Riz Ahmed has grinded for years. I mean, he was like an underground rapper. He did small roles. He, worked in Hollywood for years, building relationships, proving that he was an incredible storyteller, proving that he was an amazing actor. And then he's, is able now to basically be a showrunner for a great series that highlighted, not just, Muslim actors, but directors, Bassam Tariq, really, and even like down from like the soundtrack to the cinematography is just up and down, just excellence, I would say.
And to piggyback off of that, Justin, Riz Ahmed is a perfect example, because yes, he's at a certain place in his career, so take that into consideration when you're thinking about it. But also think, geologically, like, where is he? He's in the UK. It's so different to get a project greenlit there than it is here. Also, the financing, the access to financing is different abroad. There are governments that actually fund projects, that don't have to be of a certain caliber.
Yeah.
From filmmakers, first-time filmmakers, and so it's the barrier of entry is a little different. I think, like, for example, in Europe, where there are so many grants and the government really invests in their artists. So, take that into consideration. The type of Islamophobia that's happening here is a different flavor in the UK, but at the same time, I think the UK, views Islam slightly differently.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of factors and elements to take into account.
Fish and chips Islamophobia. There's vinegar on it.
For sure.
There is this sort of way that in the UK, like with the filmmaking and the storytelling, you have a largely working class
Yeah.
background, and in America, our narratives weren't as much around the kind of working class experience. We didn't like the experience, telling the stories of undocumented Muslims, right? Or Muslims who were in a criminal justice system, unless you were, there's some tropes that exist, right? Like in filmmaking. But what both of you have done has really worked to flip the narrative and to deepen our understanding around these systems in a way that we could see that's in the UK, like where they are pretty advanced in the being comfortable telling stories where they don't have to be the perfect Muslims. I'm also seeing that, over the past 30 years is tremendous change. Even the past 10 years has been a tremendous change in storytelling and the stories that we're watching around Muslims and the SWANA community. And so both of you have chosen to do stories that aren't about the securitization or being the the perfect model Muslim who informs the FBI, like it's just like, look, we're good, we're assets. And so you're telling these complex stories that are connecting. I want you to, you've touched upon some advice, but I want you to give some specific advice, each to take a few moments to give some specific advice to emerging Muslim filmmakers. What do they need to know that you didn't know when you started out? So what is the greatest advice that you could give them, that if you know this can maybe smooth that path a little bit?
Yeah, make a lot of mistakes early, and just keep creating. Also be part of teams. Actually, I would say that before anything. Work on other people's films. Right now, we're in a kind of stage that nobody, like, I don't know, this may be just my ageism, but like I feel like Gen Z doesn't like interacting with people. They'd rather just be like, oh, I could just get my phone and just start. And it's like, no, hold on. You need to talk with somebody. You need to send your script, your ideas. You need to bounce those ideas off of people. You need somebody to help edit your script and help you get through drafts. You also need to work on a set to understand how it all works, how you shoot a scene, how you approach a scene, how to direct actors. Those are all things that you learn, and you don't necessarily learn them the best in film school. Like, I went to film school, yeah, props, University of Arizona, but I started working on film sets like in high school. We had an indie film scene in Tucson where I grew up. I worked on a lot of Westerns. A lot of Westerns are shot in Southern Arizona, and cut my teeth working in camera department, just lugging around like extension cables, setting up for gaffers, moving lights around, and just witnessing, even if you have a menial task that has nothing to do with the creative process, you get to witness the creative process. You get to see how the magic is made. Whoa! I don't know what's happening. See how the magic is made, guys? So you get to witness how that magic is made, and that will teach you, like working on a film set for one full day will teach you basically a whole semester's worth of school. So work on film sets.
Rhym.
I love that. That's so real. I think it's very important to get as much experience on set as you can. And don't think that you need to be on some huge Hollywood set either. Like, yeah, it's cool to have that experience, but it's also, I think, more important to get on a bunch of indie sets, right? Your other friends, like, you know, student films, like just get on sets.
Like Rhym's film, like go to Africa, you need the crew.
Please, yes, come. That's gonna be so awesome. Yeah, because you know, while I have extensive experience working, you know, in America, I've only shot internationally twice, one in Toronto and then one in south of France. Once in south of France. That's so different. Also, I think every country and every region has its own like culture in production, you know? Like, you know, the Italians love to take their time and actually like really like it's a 5-hour work, you know, 12 versus the 12-hour here workday. On set over there, they're like 4 hours done, boom, you know, we got what we needed. And I don't really know what to anticipate in Algeria, you know? It might be somewhere in the middle.
Your crew is going to be like, why are you killing us? You're making us work more than 6 hours?
Who knows? You know, I don't really know what to expect. I mean, luckily I'm working with an Algerian producer and fixer who have experience, you know, and know how to run sets there. But it varies, right? Like, I think the strength of a filmmaker and primarily a director is, yeah, you know, you're like the captain of the ship in ways, but really, are you adaptable? Can you adapt? That's really a superpower. You're gonna have so many obstacles thrown your way. There's never a full smooth like set. Something's gonna come up. There are gonna be fires. How do you react? How does your team see you react? How collaborative are you under stress? Extreme stress. I mean, I had to travel the country and get like in 9 days, get like 9 interviews in for a docuseries. Like, that's insane. Me and my DP were like not sleeping. But, you know, we had a lot of fun, and we're dealing with celebrities, you know? I have to direct and prep for the next one. We're dealing in post from the previous one. So a lot of it is, how do you do under stress? Stamina is important. Are you taking care of yourself? Are you being healthy? Can you stand on your feet for hours on end for 14-hour days? You know, and still be like, yeah, let's go. Let's climb this mountain. Like, you have to really consider that. And I think the biggest piece of advice I have is for Muslim filmmakers particularly, I think, is your specific story and your background is a superpower. It is not something that you're going to be, you know, that is going to be a barrier. I think I came in as a filmmaker thinking that I don't want to be too loud about my Islam. And you don't have to be that way. You know, to your point, sis, like where we are right now in film and TV and just social media, people are aware. They understand that when you identify as a Muslim, you know, there are other it's a prism. There are other aspects of you, you know, as a filmmaker, as a brother, as this, as like a type of, you know, a citizen of a certain country or multiple countries. So that is your superpower, your identity. You don't have to hide it. You don't have to like feel like play small in certain spaces because you don't want to be too loud about your story having a Muslim, you know, character in it, or it being fully a Muslim story. I think there are so many channels and avenues to get to where you want to be. And if that is to get your film in front of the right people, that can happen. The more specific and culturally specific you are, the better, because then your target audience will know you're thinking about them. they're being heard, they're being seen, and they will advocate for you, and hopefully they will be there for you. But don't feel like you need to be like general and appease to everybody, because I think that can work against you more than it can help.
Yeah, absolutely. It comes off as inauthentic in so many ways.
Well, thank you so much. We're going to wrap up this hour. We would love to revisit this conversation. This is just the beginning of a dive, right? Of, when we have SWANA filmmakers, that we get diverse stories, that you're not just centering your own individual narratives. You're bringing together multiple communities, cultures, heritage. You're bringing together production teams from multiple backgrounds, and storytelling is a collective process. You build communities and you connect communities. So as we leave out, I want you to kind of just state out, like, how can we follow your work and support your next project? So let's make sure we close out with just that call to action of how we can be assistants. So I'm down to be like, if you need coffee, because like I want to spend that one day on the set.
Thank you again, Marguerite, for having us. This was really a great talk. If anybody wants to follow my work, my website is Mashouf, MASHOUF.tv. You can see the 1774 on Watermelon Pictures. I ask people to subscribe there. There's a streaming service called Watermelon Plus, which is distributing a lot of our stories, ones that kind of the mainstream has shunned away or is afraid to tell. So definitely check them out. And you guys can hit me up. I'm on social media, J Mashouf. I think I'm the only Iranian Justin on the main internet.
I think you are. I can be found on Instagram. I'm mostly on IG. My handle is I am Rhym, IAMRHYM. And you can also, again, I plan on posting developments on El Horba, my short, on there. So would love support, and even just like emotional support, because it's a lot. It is a lot. It's an endeavor. And so I can be reached there. You can also email me at my first and last name at gmail.com, Rhym Guissé at gmail.com, RHYMGUISSE at gmail if you want to get involved. And everything will pretty much be on the Instagram, and you'll be able to see on the Instagram account, you'll be able to see how we're doing.
Well, thank you so much to both of you. For those who signed on to watch this live stream, we will have a recording that'll be available with the highlights, and we will send out more links and resources for how you can get involved and support their projects, follow their projects, watch the shows, and you can continue to support MuslimARC's work as we continue to uplift storytellers and to make the connections and learn from them. So continue to follow us, like, comment, sign up for our newsletter. You joining us in these conversations keeps our work going. So stay tuned through the next, over the next 3 months. We are launching our campaign, the mini Histories Shared Struggle campaign. And so we started with Arab Heritage Month to uplift SWANA narratives. Next month is May. May is Asian Heritage Month, and during Juneteenth, we're making the connections, and we'll continue to honor the continued struggles of those who are connecting through storytelling and sharing the work. So we look forward to next time in May. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.